someday I'd like to ... and realizing how many things I had said that about, and just starting to ask myself, well, when exactly, Miss, you're now almost 47, when exactly is someday?
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You'll hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested.
Welcome, freedom fighters. How often do you find yourself saying, someday I'll do this, or someday I'll do that, but someday just never seems to come? Do you find yourself going through the motions, smiling on the outside for all the world to see, but secretly warring with yourself on the inside? Questioning yourself on whether you're really happy, why you continue to go through the motions, constantly criticising yourself for not doing enough, not being enough, or not achieving enough, and concerned that time is running out. Do you find yourself constantly doing what you should do rather than what you really want to do? Are you allowing your fear to live a compromise where you accept the safe, well-worn, expected path rather than go against the flow and create your own track on the road less travelled? It's the classic battle between the logic in your head and the passion in your heart. But how do you resolve it? Well, you'll be pleased to hear you're not alone. Most of us are continuously fighting this internal battle, and it's a subject that today's guest, Micki McNie, and I dive deep into. Micki McNie is a self-professed serial entrepreneur and digital nomad who combines her left-brain creative passions for travel, music, script reading, coaching and course writing with her right-brain real estate and property interests. So where is she at on this journey? What has she learned, and what can you take from this to help you on your movements going forward? Find out on this great chat with Micki McNie. Hi, freedom fighters. Welcome back. In today's episode, I'm connecting with yet another global gypsy. And I've been lucky enough to be referred through to today's guest by Kevin Graham, who you would have had to listen to a few episodes ago. And what really interests me about Micki McNie is that she invests in a way that allows her to combine all of her passions, and they are quite diverse, so really keen to dig into that. Welcome aboard, Micki McNie.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, for those that are listening in, where am I talking to you today? Because you tend to be all over the globe.
I do, and I just flew in from Bangkok via Austin, Texas, and I am now at my parents' house in Southern California.
Love it. Well, we'll dig into that travel passion as part of this as well, Micki. But for those of the audience who don't know who you are, can you just give us a quick rundown on what you do and where you're heading, and most importantly, why you do what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the answers to all those questions are complicated, but I'll give you the overview. I'm coming off about a 10-year career in real estate, where I was based in Colorado, and I had an agency, a team of 8 agents, and then was a real estate investor, which I still am, a real estate investor. and then started running my company remotely. And in the past couple of years, I've just been exploring a lot of things which have brought me back to my love of teaching. So I've been building some online courses focused around real estate and other areas. And then I'm now really getting interested in audio drama, podcasting, and screenwriting, kind of back to my creative roots.
Yeah, awesome. Well, there's quite diverse interest in all of that. And there's already with what you've just talked about, there's 1,000 questions that I'd love to ask you on it. But just to give us some context and give us a bit of a feel for what your journey has been to date, and to understand your motivations, what's been the inspiration and thought process behind what you've done and where that's taken you. Can you sort of take us back a fair way and just talk us about? And probably the best place to start is, and I know this is going back some distance, but you leave school. What do you decide to do? Why? And talk us through blow by blow the stories on the journey to take you to where you are today.
Yeah, I can do that. And leaving school is a good place to start. I did my degree in theater.
Okay.
And I remember announcing to my father that I was going to move to New York and try to make it big. And I was prepared for him to fight me tooth and nail on that, sending his daughter off to the big city. However, he didn't, which was great, but he probably knew with me he didn't have to worry about, because, I'll say, oh, I'm going to do this. And then 5 minutes later, I've got another shiny idea in front of me. And so what ended up happening was I found a study abroad program that I could do as a recent graduate. And so I actually moved to New Zealand.
Did you really? So
I did.
Bit of Kiwi blood there. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I call it my home away from home. I haven't been there in a while, but I do have my residency there now, and I've lived there twice.
Excellent.
For a total of about 6 years. Yeah. And so I just went down there just to do something different. And I ended up working for a temp agency, which is great because I got to do all sorts of things, from packing lottery tickets to I actually typed letters that the Prime Minister signed when I worked at the Ministry of Justice. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So that was, my travel bug coming in, I think.
Okay.
And I thought I would make a bit of a life down there, but I was still quite young. I mean, just a few years out of school.
Yeah.
And got into a relationship that then ended, and so I was heartbroken and thought I'm just going to leave. So
okay.
Yeah.
I just want to backtrack a little bit there. The passion for theatre.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? And because I'm interested,
sure.
Early on was very similar. I was very creative, both in terms of art and drama and whatnot. And I just love that side of it. But then I, maybe a bit like you, had a dad that get a real job, son.
Right. Yes.
You can do that after hours, but you're never going to do anything out of that stuff. So get a grip. What about yourself? Tell me about where that sort of passion for the theatre side came from.
Yeah, it goes back to my junior high teacher, and I don't know what that translates to in Australian education, but maybe age 11 or 12.
Yeah.
I had one of my favorite teachers who I was in the younger level. There were two ages in the class, and I was the younger. But we had drama class, and we had little groups, and we there was sort of like a de facto leader in each group, and somehow I was this shy little introverted girl who just came out of her shell when put on stage. And this was my first chance where he had me, not teaching kids, but sort of managing kids older than me and sort of coming up with the ideas of what we were going to do. And I really loved encouraging people who also were afraid to sort of speak up and share their voice. And so I just kind of thrived in there, and I just loved it. And I held on to that right through school and was just adamant that when I went to university, that was what I was going to study.
Yeah. Okay. And that it's sort of, so the path obviously changed. You went to New Zealand, and Then obviously a bit bitten from the relationship side, came back to the States. Where to from there? What was the thinking and what was the next step?
And I came back, and you'll see I'm touched back to this sort of creative thing, which is why I'm glad I'm coming around to it now. Because I think part of running away to New Zealand was also sort of just, that, like you were saying, everyone, it's telling you you'll never make a living if you go into the arts, and it's so competitive and it's silly to try. And so I think I might have self-sabotaged a little bit and just said, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to go somewhere else. So when I came back, I moved into a friend's apartment in Hollywood, and I started applying for jobs at the big production companies, thinking, well, I'll get my foot in the door as a secretary, and then, something magical will happen from there.
Okay, awesome.
But as anyone else out there who's ever tried to apply for a job in Hollywood, it's just an exercise in futility. You apply and you apply and you apply, and you never hear anything.
Here's a good thing: you get very good at rejection, which is one of life's major challenges, I reckon.
Yeah. So I did that for a minute, and then I financially, I was in dire straits. I paid my rent with a credit card check one month, and I thought, this is not a good idea. I better go and get a proper job.
Okay, and where did that proper job lead you?
So that led me, it kind of fed into the travel side. It led me to get into the hospitality industry, where I stayed for a number of years. So my first job was a Kon-Tiki tour guide. Believe it or not.
That would have been an absolute ball, I'm guessing.
I did a trip from LA to New York, which was like a month long. And of course, going west to east, it was all Aussies. So made lots of friends from your part of the world.
The Kon-Tikis over here are just a month long party, basically. So what was it like being the tour guide? You're probably trying to keep this disheveled mob on the train, are you?
It's quite fun, actually, because, everybody's really good-natured. They just want to have a good time, and that was sort of my job, was to keep people as safe as I possibly could, and just help share my country with them. So, coming to the States, is fairly. I mean, Australia's a big country too. There's a lot to see. So, I enjoyed it. I got to use my teaching skills, just learning about the history and teaching people, and then I found a perverse pleasure in getting up with the microphone at 7 a.m. when everyone else was hungover and dragging themselves onto the bus and cheerily wishing them a good morning and
just rubbing it in.
Just pretty much,
Love it. Awesome. And you'd stayed with that for a while, Micki?
Yeah, I did that for a couple seasons. It takes its toll. You don't really get to have a social life since you're always on the road. And so I eventually decided to kind of try and do that a little more similar thing. I started working at hotels and national parks, where I was also helping people enjoy their vacations and, meeting really interesting people. But I was able to live in one spot, and usually in very beautiful places. Up in the woods and up in the mountains.
Yep. Okay. So, continuing down that path, there was a further change at some point, I'm hearing?
Yeah, I know. I feel like we're just meandering on this path.
That's all good. That's all the things. Really good to understand.
I know. I put together my full resume once, and I think there were 45 jobs on it at that point. So
it's a good thing. I keep saying to people that are leaving school, we've got someone, a graduate that's working with us at the moment, and I just say to him, get as much experience in as many places with as many things as you possibly can.
Oh, good. And then, so I did it right.
Yeah, I reckon you did, because then you actually work out what you do want to do. Because most of the time you don't know yourself at that point in time, and it takes a few years to realise, well, this is actually who I am, and this is what I do enjoy, this is what I don't. Now I need to go and find that.
Yeah, that is right.
So where did that take you to?
Yeah, so casting my mind back of trying to keep everything straight. So I did that for a few years, and I lived in some great places like Alaska and the Caribbean. And,
nice.
And then I wound up in Colorado, where I met my husband, former husband now, but at the time.
Sure.
And so for a few years, a lot of what I was doing was just sort of finding work, because he got had a PhD in applied mathematics, and he was kind of taking jobs here and there as he figured out what his career path was, and I was just sort of along for the ride. So
okay,
I just but when we split up after another stint of living in New Zealand, funnily enough,
okay, together or so you went there
together?
together?
We went together. Yeah, we went together. He heard me talk about it and rave about it so much, and then he got a job offer, and so we went down there for about 3 years. And that was a blast. And that was where I dipped my toe back into theater, because I worked for a theater at the Auckland University, and then I started doing some crew work for a company that sort of staffed productions around town. My biggest regret is that they were filming, this is all when The Lord of the Rings was all coming out. And I thought I should just go down and knock on Peter Jackson's door, and ask for a job.
Why not?
I didn't. I know. And I didn't do it.
No?
And, no. And I'm very sad about that to this day, because everybody and their brother worked on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, because that was, down towards Queenstown? Is that where?
He was based in Wellington. Where what a workshop is and stuff. But of course, we had none of us had any idea what it was going to turn into. It was going to be this amazing, So hindsight, that one.
Hey, plenty of time. Yeah, okay, that's cool. So time in New Zealand and back there for number 2. Where to from there?
Yeah, so then came back to Colorado, and that is, unfortunately, when we ended up splitting up. And so I found myself in my mid-30s suddenly in charge of my own life again and having to support myself again, which, I had always been confident about doing, but I was applying for jobs, and I just had this realization, I'm applying for the same jobs I would have applied for out of university, and I'm being offered pay that is the same or less. And it's 15 years later, or 10 years later.
Okay.
And that kind of threw me for a loop. I really, it worried me, I thought, this is not, first of all, I'm really not excited about any of these jobs. I don't really want to be somebody's secretary, and I don't, really want to go somewhere from 8:30 to 5 every day, if I'm honest.
Yeah, fair call.
And that was when I was living at a friend's house, and she made a joke about how many home renovation shows I watched on TV and said that I should get my real estate license.
Wow. Okay.
And so my immediate reaction actually was, you've got to be kidding me. You just picture in your head this real estate lady, with her big hair and her little matching outfit. Yeah. And I was like, that is so far from who I am. But she planted a seed, and so I dove into it a little more, and I realized it was really low-hanging fruit. It's not expensive to get your license. It's just a matter of passing a test. Mm-hmm. And I started talking to some people who were doing it, and they said, no, you can really make this whatever you want it to be. Okay. If you want to ride your bike around downtown and sell apartments, you can do that. Yeah. And I just thought that was kind of my first window into the world of entrepreneurship. And I really liked what I saw there.
And was property something that was in the blood? Wasn't an interest, or was it just that you were sitting there watching TV while you're trying to work out what you're going to do, and it just seemed like a good idea at the time?
It was a little bit of both. It wasn't something I really thought about too much, although I will say my dad had always sort of, he dabbled, he'd owned a few rentals, and he'd sort of taught us that it was a good way to invest, but I could never sit still enough to think that property would make sense for me. Yeah.
How much were you influenced by your parents in relation to your thinking around that? Let's talk about your mum and your dad. How were they in their thinking around all of that?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like, my dad had his own business. He had an insurance agency that I worked in from the age of probably 12. We used to stuff envelopes for him, and then as soon as I was old enough, I was in there in the summers answering the phone, and so on the one hand, and then my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so she really just supported him and took care of us, and so she had her own work ethic. And it's funny because I feel like when I was younger, I sort of rebelled against, my dad was very much, you gotta have a job, you gotta work 40 hours a week, you gotta put in the time and then, retire, like you were saying earlier. And I just was like, nah, I don't buy that for a second. However, he had his own business, and so I kind of absorbed a lot of stuff like that from him. And he was, what he was saying was make a plan, stick to it, be steady at it, which is stuff that I don't feel I've been great at. So I don't think I realized how much value I took from just watching him and the way he worked.
By osmosis, we sort of absorb it without realizing we're doing
it. Yeah. None of us want to be our parents until we realize that we are our parents, and then
I know, isn't it scary? My dad was in real estate late, and I vowed and declared I was never going to be. I used to tell him, I'm never going to be like you. And that's not me. I'm creative. So I raced off and became an architect, and then killed myself in the process, and then ended up back in property. And I was like, okay, Dad.
Say never.
Maybe you were onto something there. Okay, so your sort of passion for property started to awaken. Take us through what you did and where that led you to.
Yeah, it was a really interesting journey for me because it was, I started out was I'm just hungry. I need a paycheck. And this seems to be an open door. And so, my first year was definitely a real struggle. I was just being an agent at that time. So I was out looking for clients and, trying to learn how to actually do this job. They don't really teach you, you go to real estate school, you get your license, they teach you the law and contracts a little bit and stuff, but they don't teach you that you're now a small business and you have to find clients and you have to manage your finances and your business structure and all these bits and pieces that are new skills you have to learn.
Yes.
But I think that's what I loved about it was it's aside from property itself, just being, there's so much you can learn. Just then running a business itself was also stuff that I was really enjoying learning. So I struggled through that first year. I finally found a good company that was really fun. And I had a great boss who really, just held my hand through the first 10 months before I finally got a real paycheck out of it. But I was living off my credit cards and
wow.
Really, feeling the stress.
It's pretty tough.
And, it was.
Because I don't know about you, but I've unfortunately been through a marriage split myself many years ago, and the biggest challenge I had, Mickey, was me, because I took it to heart. I felt like a failure. I pretty much withdrew. I call it my Howard Hughes years where I pretty much withdrew and tried to get my head around what had happened and how did I get there and what am I going to do differently. And I'd certainly made a major change. Then I gave architecture away at the same time because I blamed that for part of the exercise and then felt very vulnerable because you really are then starting again on all fronts, not just the relationship, but work and everything else. So you throw some financial challenges in there, and that would have been a pretty challenging time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was. There were some dark days where I just really didn't feel like I knew what I was doing, that I was qualified to do what I was doing, and also, you kind of sometimes you get into it's not an industry where it's very admired. We're kind of the used car salesman of of the real estate world. And so there's a lot of there's something to be said to faking it till you make it kind of thing. But, when you're out networking and you're sort of putting on the smile and, oh, yeah, things are great, because you don't want to seem desperate and you want people to hire you. And so, I struggled with that sense of not always feeling like I was being my authentic self, or that the relationships I was building were genuine, which was not something I was comfortable with.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. So, talk us through how you came through that, and then where that's then led you to.
I think, I want to say it's something that I struggled with throughout my whole career in real estate, which is part of the reason why I've sort of stepped away from it now.
Okay.
But while I was in it, I think what I did was, first, I just tried to surround myself with really good people.
Yeah.
I very quickly went from working for other people. The first company I worked with, it was a lot of fun. They were doing some really creative, interesting things. But I started worrying about just the ethical way business was being done, and the people we were doing business with. And I actually left that company preemptively just to say, I'm not going down with this ship. And I think so I just, you only have to work for someone else for 2 years. So I just kind of, took the next year with another company until I could go out on my own. And then I was just determined, that my company is going to put our clients first. We're going to, it's not going to be about the paycheck. It's going to be what's right for our clients, especially since we were working primarily with real property investors. As people are making really big decisions with sometimes the only money they have, and that just puts a lot of responsibility on me and my team to serve them well. And so I just started trying to find ways to really connect with my clients where I could feel authentic, like I was really being helpful, It wasn't just about, I don't care if you ever work with me, you're doing this and you should know this, and just giving them that information so they could make informed decisions. So that's kind of how I addressed it, was just to check in with myself. Even then, it's still hard. Sometimes you're calling somebody and you're like, do I really want to go have a beer with this person? Or do I know that they're probably going to sell their house next year and I should keep in touch,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That sort of internal conflict the whole time with that, isn't there? It's, and I'm sort of interested how you've come to grips with that, because I guess as over here, as a business very early, we decided that we would say no to as much business as we say yes to. And if we don't like the person and we don't like their values and it doesn't feel right, then shake hands and wish them well, and focus your energy on people that you do connect with and do where you respect each other. And then it's just business is a whole lot more fun and a lot more rewarding if you do that. Yeah.
Yeah. When I started training agents, and I teach them, to consider, maybe you need to fire that client, or maybe you need to not work with that client, and when you're starting out, that just sounds so wrong, because you're like, no, I need money. And I'm like, yeah, but this is going to suck up your time and energy, and you're not going to have fun. And if you just will set that aside, it'll make room for something better.
Yeah. Now, tell me about the property investor piece then, and what does that mean in your context? So what are they doing? How are you helping them? What sort of properties are they buying? I'd just love to sort of understand that in your context.
Sure. For the most part, the reason I started working with investors is because as I became an agent and I was just in property all the time, I just saw a lot of opportunity. And so I was doing some investing myself in different ways. And then I wanted to teach my clients to do that and help them do that. So we sort of ended up specializing in this, what we call a house hacker, which is a client who wants to, they want to be a real estate investor, but they're probably at the stage of where they're buying their own house first. And instead of just buying a house, they want to buy something that has a rental suite, has a granny flat out back, or it has it's a duplex and they can rent out one side and whatever, so that they're sort of helping their ability to buy the next property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the stuff that you were doing, you mentioned you'd started to invest yourself. What were you doing?
Yeah, I've dabbled in a lot of different stuff. I've done a handful of flips, both residential, and then I've also renovated a commercial building, like a storefront, and I've owned a couple notes. And right now, the best thing I've been in is I'm in a couple of large apartment building syndications where I just put the money in and I just collect my dividends every month.
Okay, so it's like nice. the old multi-family stuff that they talk about. Because I had a chat to another Aussie guy on Get Invested a little while ago called Reed Goosens, who specialises in that sort of multi-family syndication type exercise. And it's because my wife and I own property in the States, Mickey, and that's been a very interesting and challenging journey for us between you and I. We sort of jumped on a plane when the global financial crisis happened because we thought there's never going to be a better time to pick up property below its value in the States. So we spent a few trips over there, and we spent as much time talking to people as we did looking at the property, because it's the quality of the team on the ground that you've got to rely on ultimately. And that has been very challenging for us. So I can see why the syndication side of things would have some attraction, because it's got some scale. It gives you a regular dividend flow from what I understand. And you can also sort of manufacture some capital growth by some improvements to the properties that you can then take advantage of when and if the
and it's really
sold on.
Yeah, for me, it was just taking advantage of other people's expertise. Like I said, I haven't always been the best at being very systematic and steady. And so sometimes I look at something like that and I think, well, it's a little conservative. I'd like to make more, but I can, break my back and stress myself out doing a flip that I hope will make me more. But, can I do it consistently? Whereas these guys, the guys I invest with, they just know their stuff and I trust them and they've done really well. And so why not just, keep it easy, and then I can focus on other fun things.
Exactly right. And I think this is a key concept, because, I often say to people, yes, my wife and I have invested heavily in property, but it's a means to an end to us. I love it because I sort of been doing it for a long time now. But if kebabs or I'm just trying to think, chocolate bars were giving me the same return, I'd invest in those, because what it does do is has freed up time for me to do the stuff I really do enjoy, which is playing piano and getting back into the creative musical side and writing the books and stuff that I do. So it's becoming an enabler, and that's what I love about property. If you've set it up the right way, it can sort of give you an income flow without tying you up totally. To then free up time to get back into the stuff that you've perhaps buried for too long and still want to get to, and the stuff that puts a smile on your face. And it sounds to me a little bit like you've sort of weaving your way through a similar journey, Mickey. Am I right?
I am. I'll be really upfront and say I'm kicking myself because here I was. I spent 8 years working in property. I was making good money. And I was saving a lot of money and putting it into these different types of investments. And I owned a couple properties. And then instead of making a decision saying, okay, I would need to set this up so that it will support me so that I can then do something different, I just sort of got tired. And my poor agents, I must have come in and told them I was quitting, 5 times in a year. But I knew I had built something, and so I just couldn't bring myself. I was just telling myself, oh, this is wrong. You've put all this time and effort into this. You have to keep going, or you have to figure out a way to make it pay off. And I just sort of almost stuck my head in the sand. I started running the business remotely, and I was traveling around the world, and my head wasn't really in the game. And then I made some bad decisions about people to work with and lost some money on projects. And so I had the opportunity to to take what I had and put it into something nice and reliable that would now be paying, my rent or my plane tickets or whatever. And I didn't. So now I sort of feel like I do have a few things trickling in, but I feel like I learned a very hard lesson, and now I'm going to have to start over and build something again so that I can then make a better decision next time about it.
Well, let's dig into that, because I was going to talk to you about that, and having read some of the stuff about where you've been running the business remotely while you were traveling around the world, and Thailand, Argentina, and other locations. How did that go? I guess I'm interested here because, given our own experience in the States, which has been challenging, and our own desire, ultimately, we're trying to set our business up in a way that for at least 3 months of the year, we can be operating remotely from somewhere else, checking in, and then coming back and spending time on the ground to keep the wheels turning. What were the challenges in that? What worked? What didn't? I'd love you to share some of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. And I was pleasantly surprised the first year. I think it worked quite well. And what worked was I had to get out of the day to day. It's with any business where you've started it and you've grown it, we tend to want to hold on to all the pieces. And so, I was doing stuff like going and checking the mail, which I enjoyed, so that's fine, but really not, what I would call a high dollar activity that the boss should be spending time on. And so when I decided, I was actually working with a career coach at the time, and she was the one that introduced me to this idea of being a digital nomad. And by showing me a program where they facilitated travel for you, they organized your accommodation and workspace and all that, and you just kind of had to show up. And she was just showing it to me as like, here's an interesting thing someone made, and I was like, I need to go and do that. And within months, I had signed up, and I was on my way to South Korea, of all places.
Awesome.
But it sort of forced me to say, all right, how do I make this work? Yeah. Which I think is important for anything that is, in your life, whether it's an investment or a business or, your family or whatever. It's like, there are going to be times where you are going to have to step out. You get sick, or you want to take care of someone else. Yeah. And if you're not set up for that, if you don't have the systems in place to take care of that, it can really wreak havoc on your finances or your stress levels. Yeah. So it was good. So I had the chance to sort of think about, okay, how am I driving new business? Should I be the one that's doing the networking? Can I do that remotely? I was doing a lot of that through an online investing forum already. And the cool thing was I found that when I was so worried about people not getting the fact that I was not present. But I found that I actually attracted a lot of clients who totally got it. They were like, oh yeah, we're from Florida. We want to live in Colorado, so our jobs are remote. Mm-hmm. You're doing what we want to do.
Perfect.
Which was great. Yeah.
So I guess you mentioned the systems. I guess the other really important ingredient here, and I'm sort of talking from our experience, is the quality of people that you've got on the ground that are doing it while you're not there. That's one of the biggest challenges, and that's dynamic, because they can be great today and something can happen in their lives tomorrow. And it can be a different story. Yes. How did you find that?
Yes. I was pretty lucky, I think. And I think that stemmed from just originally trying to surround myself with good quality people. I had a team of 8.
Okay.
And when I announced that I was leaving, 4 or 5 of them self-selected themselves out of the organization.
Wow.
And which was fine, because we didn't really need 8 people, and that was something else I had to learn, was that I just had grown in ways that weren't smart. Yeah. I just was adding bodies. People weren't really serving a purpose. I was still driving most of the business, so I was left with a core group of people who I still refer business to now, who I trusted to take care of things, and then I used my time away to build out our standard operating procedures and create checklists and things so that they weren't having to be micromanaged by me, but I could trust that things were being done at the level that I expected them to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a pretty big learning curve, and it's something that I personally continue to go through, because my perfectionism tends to get in the way, and you want to control everything, and all you're doing is holding people back, and they're actually a lot happier when you actually get out of the way and allow them to have the freedom to start feeling like they're making a big contribution themselves. Yeah,
I heard a great talk about that this summer, and I hadn't really put two and two together in my mind. I knew I was, a bit of a control freak, but I thought it was justified. I have really high standards. I want the clients to be met with these high standards. And, but, this guy was just saying, you can't give people things to do. You've got to give them ownership.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, I did not do that very well.
Yeah. I'm suffer the same thing. We're very fortunate. We've got an awesome team. They're almost like a family, the way we operate together. And we call each other business partners, because that's effectively what we are. I'm helping them to be successful, and if they're successful, then so are we. But it is a big adjustment for someone who likes to have their hands on everything. And, I sort of grew up as an architect where everything had to be just right. It's quite challenging to be able to let that go. And it sounds like you've had similar challenges in your front, Mickey.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, that would have been a pretty interesting journey in itself, because it's that sort of, it's slow release, isn't it? In that, well, I don't really want to be doing this, but I don't want to let it go. How can I hold on to it but do something else? That would have been having been through that when I left architecture, it's a really challenging time. How are you feeling with that now, and where you at on all of that?
It's, it is challenging. And a lot of it's just pressure you put on yourself, to say, oh, I'm this age, I should be here in my life by now. Or I've proven that I'm successful at something. So even if I'm not excited about it, I should stick with it because the money's good, or, And I really struggled knowing what my why was. So my approach was just to keep working with coaches who just kept pushing me on stuff. And I think I've come to the conclusion so far that my why is really my family. I just want to be able to take care of them. Both my brothers work hard and have kids, and my parents are getting older, and, they just need more care. And I would love to be the person that can just say, great, I can take care of that for you.
Okay.
And, in a financial sense and otherwise, because if last year, because I was working remotely, I was able to come home and be with my mom as she recovered from a hip surgery, and I couldn't do that if I had a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff. So sorry, to get back to your question, I really have just had to let go of a lot of beliefs that I have about myself and about what I should, air quotes there, be doing. And I've just started to let go a lot more and say, I'm going to play. I spent the last 2 months just making stuff. That's what I decided to do. Okay. It's like, I've talked about all these things, I'd always wanted to do this, always wanted to write this, and blah, 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 like you said, get back into music more. So now I'm just going to give myself the freedom to do that and see what comes out of it, instead of saying, well, I better go get this kind of a job to make this kind of money and stuff. And just being a little more playful with my approach to, because at the end of the day, I'm always fine. I'm never not going to be out on the street. No one's going to let me starve to death, And so, when you ask, like, what have you invested in? I think in most of my life, I just invested way too much in worrying. about what might happen. And that's just a killer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty common though, Mickey. I think most of us fall into that. It's like, let's take the safe road. Let's, this mightn't be what I want to do, but it's going to pay the bills. And then suddenly wake up when they're 55, 60 and go, holy hell, I'm a long way through this journey and I haven't really done anything that I've actually wanted to do. I think it's a very common thing. I applaud you for having the courage to say, well, hold on, there's some stuff I really want to get done here. I'm going to trust the universe that it's going to be okay, and I'm going to start putting my energy into things I really do enjoy, and see where that leads me to. So, and
it's funny because I always was one to say, you know, when people would come to me saying, oh, well, what if this fails? And what if, I would always say the rule is if you're going to what if, you have to what if both sides of it. You can say, what if I'm an absolute failure? And you have to say, well, what if you're a raging success? You know, but it's so hard, of course, to take our own advice.
Yeah. So the external mirror is something that I think we worry way too much about as well. It's if we could. And it comes back to our, because I struggle with this all the time, the self-esteem thing, because there's a little voice on the inside and says, one day someone's going to find out that you're not who you think you are. And so you spend a whole lot of this time, convincing people that you are everything that so-called society believes that you should be. And it's probably only been in the last few years, Mickey, that I've sort of started to go, well, stuff that. I couldn't give monkeys what other people think. This is who I am, and this is actually what I like doing. If you don't like it, well, that's okay. What about you? Are you sort of you feeling comfortable with that? Where are you at in that context?
It's an interesting thing because I always thought when I was younger, I felt like I was very confident, and then I feel like the older I've gotten, the more I'm starting to realize that I do edit myself a lot, and I don't want to do that. I do. I want to live very out loud. I just want to be unapologetically myself, but, old habits die hard. And so it's definitely on my radar, something that I am working on. And I, sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought there.
No, okay. Well, let's talk about. Let's zone in on the play thing. You said, okay, I'm just going to play. What are you playing at? Just talk us through what play means to you. Yeah,
that's been really fun. So it was, like I said, it kind of spawned from. I heard myself saying, someday I'd like to ... and realizing how many things I had said that about, and just starting to ask myself, well, when exactly, Miss, you're now almost 47, when exactly is someday? And so I just, I actually took a job this summer that turned out to be a terrible fit. But it sort of propelled me to say, all right, well, if I'm not going to do that, what am I going to do? And so I built, I've been building these online courses, and I really love it. Okay. I love designing the curriculum. I love editing the video. I mean, it surprised me that I enjoyed it so much. But so I built some courses, and it's just been stuff like I go to these film festivals and writers' conferences, and I see people struggling with networking. And so I built a course called Networking for Screenwriters. And I just have it up on Udemy, and I think I got a $36 payout today, So but I know I've built something. And I read screenplays and give people feedback, and I know how hard it is to write a screenplay. And so I was like, well, I better try to write one, and so I'm working my way through a 90-day screenplay program now. And awesome. So those are a couple of the things that I've been working on. I'd like to be writing some more music. I've got a ton of ideas.
Yeah, great. Well, there's a clear creative side there. Do you play a musical instrument
I do. Yeah, I'm a singer first and foremost. I play piano, but I taught myself guitar so I could accompany myself.
I'm the same. Yeah, I sing. Yeah. I love to sing, but to be able to sing and not have to rely on a band where you're virtually marrying for other people, I need to play an instrument. So I self-taught guitar, and now the last couple of years I'm going hard on piano because it just puts a massive smile on my face every time I tinkle the ivories. But
yeah, I haven't had a piano in my house in probably at least a decade, and that's something I also would like to change.
Yeah, it's just there's something magical about music, and it's the universal language. There's absolutely no question about that. So yeah, that's awesome. So it's really good though that you're putting the big rocks in, and because if you put the big rocks in, then that puts a smile on your face. Then you tend to attract other good things into your life. That's in my own view, I guess. And it does affect your sense of well-being and your confidence and everything else that goes with that. So if you're not sort of filling that tank, which a lot of people just go hard on working 50, 60 hours a week, and then they spend their weekends carting the family around, and they're exhausted. There's no margin. There's no time to actually put the big rocks in, and that has a consequence. What's your feeling around that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, it's just been, I always have just been waiting for something to happen. You know, I've just been like, okay, well, when I get here, you know, when I make this much money, I'll have time to do this. Or when I figure out what my next career is, then I'll be happy because I'll feel more fulfilled in my daily life. And I've just had to say, one, you know, a lot of the things I want in my life, I have control over, you know. If I don't want to be stressed about money, it's not that I need to go out and make a bunch of money. It's that I need to choose to not be stressed about money. And it's really that simple. It's not simple to do, but it's really that simple. And so for me, it's just been about taking ownership of my life and then recognizing that it's happening right now. And for all I know, you know, this might be the last 30 minutes or the last 24 hours. So really, why waste it on straight out? You're laughing. I can tell you agree. Yeah.
Spot on. Absolutely nailed it there. That's exactly it. If we're not, again, we're getting philosophical here, but for me, happiness is a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice we can make right now. And, it's not a situation or circumstance unless we allow it to be.
Yeah.
So making that call to go, right, this is what I love doing. I'm going to do that, and then the rest can find its course is a pretty big step, Mickey. So that sounds awesome. Now I want to extrapolate that a bit. So let's have a look at. I'd love you to talk us through what is your ideal lifestyle. What are you doing? Where are you doing it? Who are you with? What's your day, week, month, year look like? Talk us through. I'd love you to paint a picture for us of what your ideal lifestyle looks like.
Yeah. And I'm still sort of allowing myself to dream that. But what I've been focusing on is like, what are the qualities I want in it? And so for me, ease is a big thing. You know, it's, I get up in the morning and I have the time and the space to do whatever's most important to me. If I'm writing something, or I'm, you know, connecting with my partner, or, you know, that I have the space to have a cup of tea and listen to the birds chirp, and then go about my day. I definitely want to, I think I'm a 6 month here, 6 month there kind of person. Yeah. So I'd love to have my little renovated cottage in the Irish countryside, and with a garden and all of that, and then you know, my flat in some bustling metropolis where I go to get my fix of movies and fancy restaurants, and you know, I can't tear myself away from the city, but I know I need a little more peace and quiet in my life. So I'd like to own homes in 2 different places. I'd like to just be being creative. I think one of the things that has put me off from doing a creative business in the past is this idea of I have to do everything like I did in my last business. And now I was like, no, I don't. I just need to figure out what I'm good at and then hire the people to do all the other stuff. So, so just, and then lots of time with family, just be great to be able to say, hey, everybody, let's do a vacation by the beach. I've rented a couple houses and we'll fly you out. And,
yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
The time thing is the piece, isn't it? I know for myself, when I came out of that dark cloud after the marriage went belly up, and my father had some pretty serious health issues at the same time, and he sort of grabbed me by the throat and said, wake up to yourself, don't end up like me, you better start getting your money to work for you rather than working for money. Yeah. That sort of pushed me down the quite boring property path. we're just buyers and holders, and that's worked really well for us here in Australia.
Yeah, that's how you do it, though.
Well, it is boring. There's nothing exciting about it. But if you allow time to do its thing, then you actually get your time back. That's the exciting thing, I think, Mickey. And because of what Dad said to me, I had the privilege then years later when Mum was sort of diagnosed with terminal cancer. I had the privilege of taking 12 months out pretty much to help Mum die with dignity at home in her own bed. And it was that time luxury that I had as a result of what we'd invested in around the property side that gave me the opportunity to spend that time, which I'll never regret. It's probably some of the most precious time I've spent as a result. And while I miss her like hell, I don't feel like I've missed out on saying what needed to be said and being there in the good times and the bad. And so that's awesome, Mickey. Have you got any thoughts then? And I guess it's still formative in your own mind how you're going to create or what you're going to invest in to create that lifestyle for yourself. You've got any thoughts at this stage?
I'm going to continue making things, and what I have what's kind of been bubbling up over the last few months is audio drama. It's so podcasting, but scripted podcasting. It's something that's been around for a while, but it's very much there's a new wave of it happening, and it's just a lot more accessible than, because I've thought about trying to break into the film and TV industry, but it's just things are just done a certain way, and if you're not 22, all of that I don't want to move to LA, I don't want to work for someone who's going to treat me poorly. I don't want to claw my way through, No. So it's sort of a media industry that is on the cusp of really breaking out. There's a lot of potential there, but it's still accessible and it's still very much a community. And so it's all the things I love about creativity with opportunity. So I'm not sure what that looks like. I've got some great ideas for services to support the industry, and also I could just come in and write stuff and produce stuff. It's a very low bar, low barrier to entry. So I think that's where the field I'm headed in. Who knows what that will actually look like, but I'm pretty excited about the possibilities for sure.
Well, I think the as you mentioned already, the opportunity you have is if you make something that is then there forever, so people can access it, they listen to it, they can read it, then you've effectively created an asset that people can see as value, but you don't have to physically deliver it every day of the week. If you continue to build around that, then ultimately you can monetize that to the point where that'll fund the lifestyle that allow you to do other creative things and spend the precious time with your mum and dad. Yeah. Location
independence has become really important to me. So that's another thing about it that I like.
Yeah. And just for those listeners who don't understand location independence, it means you can do anything from anywhere and the income comes in without you necessarily having to be there to deliver it.
Yes.
And it's certainly something that since reading the 4-Hour Work Week and a whole bunch of other stuff around that years ago, I was like, right, this is a path we're on. And hence the reason why my wife and I have created a business, and our property investments give us a strong income here that doesn't necessarily need us, and that gives us the freedom then to spend 3 months a year traveling around the world, enjoying other cultures and soaking into other people doing the same thing. Awesome.
Beautiful.
That sounds awesome. All right. Well, look, what I'm perhaps keen to do is to dig into what I like to refer to as the ambush session, if I can.
Yeah.
Mickey.
Bring it on.
And it's the old, the sort of machine gun dance questions that all the listeners love to sort of get your best tips and tricks on. So kicking straight into that, what's your favourite quote and why? Is there a motto or something you live your life by, or it might be one of your own, or one that really resonates with you? What can you share?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is Rita Mae Brown, where she says, "The reward for conformity is that everyone likes you but yourself."
That's awesome. That's gold.
It's just a reminder to be, just be yourself. That's all you can do, really.
That's quite powerful. Actually, I haven't heard that one before. That's a beauty.
Okay.
What about on the reading side? Given that you do a lot of reading, mind you, probably a lot of scripts and whatnot, but clearly an avid reader. What's the top book that you would recommend people read?
One of my favorite books that I reread periodically is called The Practical Dreamer's Handbook. And it's a lot about sort of, figuring out the life you want to live, but also very practical ways to support yourself in that financially. And, it's very much along the lines of your ethos, is that it's invest your time and your money into the things that matter to you. So It's Practical Dreamer's Handbook.
Like it. I haven't read that one either. So that's gold. I'm an absolute.
I stole it from someone's bookshelf when I was house sitting for them, I have to admit.
Best way to do it. That's the best way to do it, I reckon. And house sitting is a great way to see the world. That's certainly something that Sonia and I do a fair bit of. So, cool. Now, this one is probably more relevant to Aussies than it is to the States, but it's a subject that people talk about a lot here in terms of feeling like they pay too much tax. What's the top thing that you've done to minimise tax at your end, Mickey?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, and I don't know if this would apply in Australia, but in the US, there is this little loophole of if you're not in the country, then you can write off a certain amount of your income. So actually, by becoming a digital nomad and living overseas, I was able to reduce my tax significantly over the past couple of years. Yeah, so I guess even if you can't directly apply that principle, the thing is, be creative. When you start doing the things you want to do, sometimes it supports you in that way too. They might find a little creative loophole you can use.
That's just another great reason to want to travel. I love it. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Okay, now turning back to the investment theme, what's the worst and best piece of investment advice that you've ever received, Mickey?
Oh man, let's see. I think the best advice I've ever gotten, which I dole out frequently as well, is that you just really need to do your homework when you are getting into business with other people. Get referrals, talk to people that have worked with that person, think of all the questions you can ask and then think again. And if there's something that just isn't sitting right, then listen to it, because something else will come along. I think we always feel like, if I miss this opportunity, then nothing else will come along. But if you're doing your research and your intuition's kind of bugging you, then I say, listen to it and just wait for the next right thing.
Yeah, that's a really good call. There's way too many of us that ignore our gut feeling, and how many times is your gut right? It's yeah. In fact, every time I've gone against my gut, I've regretted it. So I hear exactly what you're saying. That's a good call. What about the worst piece of investment advice?
Yeah, I'm really struggling to think of a bad piece of investing advice that I've gotten. I've definitely been pushed towards some bad deals where I've sort of argued against them and saying, here's the reasons why I don't think this is a good idea. And people have said, no, it's great, and then a year later they're like, yeah, you were right. So I think I've just been fortunate, to really, again, because I do my homework. Even when I get advice, I do my homework and I consider the source and I check it out with other people. So I've been really fortunate to have really great people around me giving me good advice. So
brilliant. Love that. Okay. And the a personal habit that contributes to your personal success? Micki, what would you share there?
Yeah, I've developed a lot of new habits over the past few years, getting a morning routine down and stuff. But I think the one thing that I am not an expert at, but I am working on continually, is not complaining. Because as soon as you just tell yourself you can't complain, it sort of forces you to focus on solutions.
Yeah.
And not problems. Yeah. And it just makes you a nicer person to be around.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yep.
Which is my goal. I'd like to be a nicer person to be around. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think creatives are by nature very critical. And I'm talking about myself here. And because you're critical, you tend to see fault in things that then I know when I was an architect, perfection is everything. So I
think that's okay. It's okay to assess things, but then just don't go down the stream of, oh, well, rah, rah, it's just then say, okay, well, what are we going to do about it?
Well, I'm a much happier person since I gave away architecture, because I gave away that whole critical thing. Yeah, I just ask my wife, Sonia, she'll tell you. It's probably been the best thing I've done, because I've just learned to let that shit go, which is really good, actually. So, yeah, that's such a simple thing, though, Micki, that many people don't. So if you just get up in the morning and say, I'm not going to complain, and you actually start it with some gratitude. Okay, what am I happy for? What am I thankful for? Wow, it's amazing how it affects your outlook. There's no question about that. So that's some gold right there. Okay, if we sort of bring it to a head then, and we focused on what are the best or most worthwhile investments that you've ever made, and I'm talking here about your investing your time, energy, money, or relationships, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think relationships always is what it comes down to. And what stands out for me is when I was in a few years into my real estate career and I had people starting to come to me for advice, I didn't have a lot of spare time. I was working pretty hard, but I just always tried to make time to have lunch with people and pass on what I had learned, because I really appreciated the people who had gone before me and done that for me. Yeah. And I think it's important to give other people a leg up. And so, and now it's like I have lifelong friends who I actually just needed a video testimonial for something. And I, went to one of these guys that I just started talking to him when he was an investor. We'd have lunch once a month, and then he ended up coming to work for me, and now he has his own business and is very successful, and I'm thrilled to see that. Awesome. And it's very nice to hear when, he'll say, oh yeah, you should totally work with Micki. She changed my life because she met with me when she didn't really have an incentive to, and it just goes to show that, when you give what you can, whether it's your knowledge or your time or your support to people, it comes back.
It does. And it's, I don't know about you, but I just find it really fulfilling, just to give to someone without any expectation of anything in return. And then to see that, seed grow into something that, they get personal success from. I don't think there's. Yeah.
I'm very much an abundance person. If we all help each other do better, then we all do better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Now, just to sort of bring it to a close, if you were to speak to someone who's just leaving school then, Micki, what would you advise them to invest their time, money, and skills in to create freedom for themselves? What would you say?
Wow. Oh, man, that's a lot of pressure. But I think our systems are so broken, at least in the United States. It's very formulaic. You go to school, you go to university, you get a job. And I would say invest your time in relationships and experiences. I was there's a meditation I listened to which reminds me, it says set goals based on what you want to learn. And I really liked that. So, if you're just coming out of school and everyone's telling you, oh, you better do this, you better do that, listen to your gut and think about what are the things you want to learn, what's the type of person you want to be, and invest your time in the people and experiences that will help you become that person.
Gold. That's absolutely gold. That's, if you just get back to that, ignore all the noise and all of the should and the must and all of that crap.
There's no rules. There are no rules.
There aren't. And that trodden road of school, uni, career, I know myself. I tried to console my good father that I could combine my creative side and have a real job by becoming an architect. And because it sort of seemed like a nice balance between the two that tick those boxes.
Yeah.
So I went to uni, I did all that. And I've had a great time through it. But at the end of the day, that came at a pretty significant cost. If I'd taken on board the advice you gave then and then got back to, what's important to me and what do I need to go and learn to help me do that, either by talking to other people and getting that experience, I probably would have avoided a lot of the pitfalls that I've had along the road, Micki. So, yep, that's
I know that trip too.
Okay, well, just to bring it to a close, and I'm very appreciative of the time you've spent with us. What time is it over in your neck of the woods?
It's 4:45 in the evening. I'm going to go have dinner with my brother and my niece and nephew. Awesome,
good to hear that. Well, what's next, new and exciting for you, Micki?
Yeah, I mean, so right now I'm just sort of learning some about the podcast industry and the audio drama stuff. I'm going to reach out to some people that I've met at festivals recently and just see if there's ways that I can help them in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And just trying to be creative, writing every day and trusting that something will come of all of this.
Well, stay in touch because I think there's a lot of people doing podcasts that are making it up as they go along. And a bit like you, I've been doing a lot of reading around the art of the interview. And I think my next book's actually going to be The Art of the Interview because
very cool.
I just think there's a massive gap there. There's a lot of people doing this, and certainly I love the podcast journey because I get to meet some fantastic people like yourself in all corners of the world and learn lots on that journey. And it's a great way to communicate to people in a way that, voice is a very important trust element. And if people can hear you, then they start to feel like they know you. But I think there's a massive opportunity there for someone like yourself with the skills you've got to help craft that, because the storytelling and the narrative journey that a podcast can be as an episode can turn what could be a pretty average conversation into a very intriguing and engaging piece of audio. So would encourage you to do that. I think there's a massive opportunity there for those that recognise how powerful podcasting can be. Great.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Excellent, Micki. Well, thanks again. I'll stay in touch on that and really appreciate your time. Look forward to catching up and watching a journey as we move forward.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I'm really glad we connected.
Thanks, Micki.
Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get-invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you live forever and live as if you'll die tomorrow.